Hello everyone, my name is Judith Rosser-Davies and I'm Head of Government Relations and Education at the British Fashion Council, and I'm also Chair of the Colleges Council Steering Committee. Welcome to this session this afternoon. Before we start, I'd just like to make a few points about the work that we're doing here at the British Fashion Council to support education. We've been really working hard over the last few years to extend the education opportunities that we have across the industry, and have been working closely with industry and with partners to make that happen. We are really committed to making the industry as diverse as possible and widening pathways into the industry and giving experiences to young people and also older people who want to re-enter the industry later in their career. We have some incredible initiatives that we run, including scholarships and our Fashion and Business Saturday clubs that are open for teenagers across the country to really get a taste of what the fashion industry is about. And I guess at the centre of all our work is our Colleges Council, which is a membership of the top fashion design colleges around the country. It's a diverse group of colleges that come together. We work closely with them to deliver competitions and seminars for students and also course leaders to help them bring them closer to the industry. Graduate Preview Day is a big part of the work we do. It runs annually, and this year obviously we're looking at celebrating the work of the graduating students who are graduating under such difficult circumstances. And as part of this, we're moving to a virtual Graduate Preview Day. So without further ado, I'd like to welcome Emma, Franck, Faye and Sabrina to discuss further their top tips for getting your first job.
My name's Emma Davidson and I am the CEO of the recruitment company DENZA. And I've invited some friends today from the industry to speak about what we do, how we do it, and some of the best tips that we can share for graduates and candidates getting into the industry. Who wants to go first and sort of talk about themselves, their background, how they ended up doing this job? Maybe Franck.
Hi, I'm Franck Jacquard. I'm from Paris in France. I'm the founder of the research firm called Bakeneko, which has been existing for 3 years. I have been in the recruitment industry for 15 years in total. I started in 2005 after an earlier career in operational positions, where I had my own brand on the one hand, but I also worked with some big companies like Louis Vuitton and small designers, but small back then, like Dries Van Noten. So I have a diverse operational expertise, I say a transversal understanding of careers, and that helped me going through recruitment.
Sabrina, you've got a really interesting background.
Background. Yeah, before, you mean before opening Between?
Exactly.
I founded Between Design Research in Milano together with Elisabetta Berla, who is still my partner. And so it's 20 years ago, after an experience in Condé Nast and 13 years in Romeo Gigli, where I was in charge of the communication and the image of the shops worldwide. After so many years, then Romeo Gigli was sold, so many things happened to the company and to the brand, and I was always in touch with Elisabetta, even if she had left years before from the company, and we decided to open a headhunting company just in fashion designer. At the beginning, it was just fashion designer, as we knew during the year. We have met so many talented, creative fashion designers in Romeo Gigli, and often they couldn't find a good job, even if they really deserved it. And at the same time, we saw so many companies to make big mistakes in Italy, choosing not the right designer, so it wasn't a good marriage. And so we tried, even if so many people was telling us that headhunter were just for manager and not for designer, not for creative people, but we succeeded and we opened, and after a while we expanded to product manager, merchandiser. We worked a lot in Italy and in Europe. And after 10 years, we started with Far East, and we started traveling in China to have contact with the government and big companies.
You've got an office, don't you? One in Milan and one in Shanghai.
Yeah, we were obliged, because without an office, it's very hard. We are 6 people in Milano and 2 in Shanghai. We are like a boutique company, a small company who follows both candidate and clients very carefully. When we start working with a company, usually they trust us and we go on. And it's easier because we know the dynamics of the team and then not only the specific need, technical, but also the personality of people. And it's very important to make a marriage works.
What do you think?
So I work on design and non-design positions at DENZA. So I'm head of creative search there. And we work internationally and across every level. So I've got quite a lot of experience with graduates, as much as I would do with heads of design. And we always try and push for more graduate placements, which is difficult when there's so many graduates, and obviously we'll come to it but being a tough time in the industry right now as well. But before that, I did work in design, and I worked for an agency that we worked for so many different brands, from Reese to Margaret Howell to all sorts of things. So it kind of put me in quite a good position to work in recruitment, because I'd already worked for so many different brands. But yeah, it's just one of those things that kind of came to me and I really enjoy it. And it's lovely working with so many designers and so many talented graduates as well.
If you've just graduated and you want to get your foot in the door, if a graduate is applying directly either to an agency or to a company, what do you suggest they do and what they shouldn't do?
First, I have to say that at our firm, and even in the one I was working with before, I'm not so experienced with placing just graduated people. We are more specialized in more senior and experienced profiles. But being in contact with schools is something I've always done, and I've always attending graduation shows and try to give as much advice as possible to people who just graduate. What I would say, in the way that young designers approach the market in the first place, needs to be probably understanding that they are not the only ones to do it. As Faye said, there are many graduates at the same time trying to find their first job, their first position. So when, of course, they have to address their applications to both firms and to companies, and also to their network when they have a chance to have a school that helps them to solicit their networks. But of course, with messages that are as focused and short as possible, including portfolios. I understand that they always want to show as many things as possible, to give a full picture, so that we allow who they we understand who they are, and all the facets of their talents, which is something we want to discover when we meet them. We don't need to see everything in the email and in the first portfolio. So that's one thing that is important to say, to be very efficient in the tools that they send, and also in the resume. They have to accept that they have very little experience because they're young. It's not something negative. It's something that it's just what it is. So they don't have to feel obliged to put too many things in the resume that are not so relevant. It's always interesting to put things that only they consider gives an interesting information for us to read. If it's just adding some lines and ink on the paper, it's useless, actually. That's my thinking.
What do you think, Faye?
Yeah, I would agree with that. For me, I want it to be really concise. I want to have an email that says, what their name is, what school they're graduating from, and what they do. And that's kind of all in just a snapshot, and then a really nice concise email with what they're looking for, and attachments. I can open the size of them. And I know what Franck was saying, and I totally understand. You've worked all of this time, you've got this massive body of work, but we do like to meet people anyway. So we do want to go through that portfolio, and we do want to see the tactile work and everything. But for just a hello and introduction, it needs to be like a small file size that we can open, because you know how busy we are, and obviously they're going to send it out to other companies as well. Heads of design, they're super busy. So they just want a really concise snapshot of the CV, what you do, your work. It doesn't have to go on forever, and people will be more enticed by that, a little taster of work.
How about organising the files that people send? For example, calling files by your name rather than portfolio, compressed.jpeg.pdf, for example.
And many other letters that you never understand what it is. And if you have to just record the download in a database, you have to change the name or you lose it. Yeah, they should write a title. It's not so complicated. I really agree with that. Yeah. And I completely agree with what you already said. I can add that so many times I have to repeat to English or French designer that without some Italian spoken, it's very hard to get a job in Italy, because you have the seamstresses or the pattern maker or the technician who often don't speak a word of English. So some Italian, at least some, because they are very open when Italian, and they are touched when somebody speaks a little Italian. It will be enough, but some Italian has to be spoken. And another important thing, as you know, it's not like in France and in England where most of the work are in London or Paris, but here in Italy, you have to be ready to live in other city apart from Milan. And the company are spread in all the territories. So it could be in Tuscany for leather goods, and not only, or knits, or the silk in Como, or around Le Marche for shoes, another kind of shoes, or Veneto for more refined and elegant shoes. It depends. Or Rome, now you have Gucci, Valentino, and some other in Rome, but you have not to focus in Milano. So or Milan or nothing, because today you have to be flexible.
Yeah.
Flexibility and passion, and willing to try, to test, to go, to learn. Yeah.
Franck, is it necessary for candidates wanting to come and work in Paris or in France to speak French, or are studios multilingual?
Not anymore. Some 10 or 15 years ago, I would have said exactly as Sabrina said. Today, most studios can handle and work with people who speak English only. She gave the example of technical people who, of course, speak English either less well or not at all, and they always appreciate also that someone who speaks French or try to speak French with them. But more and more, it's becoming a non-issue. It's helping a lot having international studios and most work in English.
So for somebody who is looking for a job, where should somebody look? Is it going to agencies, or do you have particular websites in your countries? I mean, Faye, where do you recommend?
So for me, I think it's really great when we see graduates, but I think you've got to be so proactive these days. You can't just register with a headhunter and think, oh, well, they're going to get me a job, because like we say, there's so many people graduating at the same time, and it's very competitive. And I think now more than ever, people they can use things like social media, they can use LinkedIn, they can have their own websites, they can apply for, I've seen different fashion companies mentioning looking for graduates on Twitter, mentioning looking for graduates on other websites such as Business of Fashion or Fashion Worky, or even often emailing the universities as well. If they've got a school they particularly prefer that they think they have good skill set from, then they may email over to the school, who would send things out to them as well. So use every avenue. And I think that's the great thing about actually graduates now, is they were so much more tech savvy than I was. So they have a world of, you know, they have all this world of internet and social media and everything, that things, you have to look for things and you have to apply for way more things than you think you do, unfortunately, but at least they have that sort of access to the industry that I didn't have at the time. So I think it's really worth using every avenue.
Do you think, Sabrina, that candidates or graduates should apply directly?
Yeah, I think they should do both. Yeah, we recommend that they always monitor the website, the career page of the company. In Italy, they very often publish the position, and the Barrier brand, they have their own page with the job position. So directly can be a good idea, but also through Headhunter. We publish the position in our website, but also in LinkedIn and Instagram. Yeah, very often in Instagram, because it's not easy for us to find a job for a very junior designer with 1 or 2 years experience. Very seldom we have this kind of request, of course, but when we have a good relation with a client, we try to help students or graduated or designer with 2 years of experience to accept, to form, to help them to grow, because it's a commitment also for them. You know, they have to dedicate time to in this phase. And it's hard. We came very often to the fashion show of last year's students, and just 2-3 times I succeeded to have some of them in Zegna, Ferragamo, Valentino, but with a big effort, just 3 times. It's not an incredible average for graduated. So I suggest them to do both, through us and also directly.
And through multiple recruitment companies as well. So I'm always recommending that graduates approach multiple agencies in different countries to really spread the net, to look for opportunities. Maybe someone can't help you straight away, but if they like your CV, I think, if they like your CV and they like your work, they will remember you.
And I think, another, I don't know if you agree, if you all agree with me, Franck, but in my opinion, it's useful to go on with working in the portfolio to create a project who are different from the one you have made at school. You could, for example, if you like a brand, think of a brand or two and prepare a specific project for this brand, thinking about the evolution the brand could have, or in their opinion, what it could be the next season, the next collection. And sometimes these work very well. And when they apply for a position, they could send their CV and a small extract of their portfolio with a special project made for them. We saw that this worked, even when we suggested to do it directly, so the client is not afraid to have to correspond as a fee, because usually we don't even ask for graduate, of course. But if they find the right person directly, they are really proud and happy, the clients in Italy. And so to help students or graduated or young designers to be accepted, they have to think with the head of the company, head designer or HR, why they should really choose him or her for that position. They should give something more and not simply extract of their academic portfolio and the CV. It's not enough. There are too many.
Following on from that, we just had our first ever London Fashion Week digital offline, and we've seen how different brands have encompassed that. J.W. Anderson actually made a book and sent that round as presentation. We saw Antwerp School. What do you think the future of fashion is going to be after this kind of break that we've had this season?
Actually, the fact is that even before the crisis, incredible crisis we've been through this year, the fashion industry was already going through something, a change that was there for a few years. Obviously, many things could not go on in the same way as they used to work in the past decades. And this was something that was already discussed a lot in companies. Some, already big changes had been tried in the past season. If you remember the Seeing Now Buy Now, that was started by many companies and then abandoned, and then
that went really well, didn't it?
Some companies are trying it again,
Idea.
What I think is that the business model of the fashion industry is being probably rebooted in a way that we don't know yet how it will be in the end. Probably different strategies will cohabit for a while. Maybe on the long term, probably each company can define its own model in this new environment. Some might be fully digital, some might try to be in the opposite, very concrete, very local, very close to their customers in their stores. Probably all strategies can be tried today, and if it's well done, it has a chance. It's only a question of trying to be aligned with the values that the customer will use when buying, basically.
So if I was a graduate now and I was wanting to enter the industry, I personally think that there are so many additional skills now because we've been working from home, we've got digital presentations, and do you remember when e-commerce started to be a big thing? People had to start designing clothes that could photograph well and sell well and be returned and not turn up into a screwed up heap, right? So now we're having digital presentations for things because there's the environmental impact that we are all concerned about from Fashion Week. For example, if we would have online shows, do you think that's going to change the way people should think about design and how garments are going to look and what's going to be attractive to people, and for a graduate to think about those kind of things?
No, I think it's important that I think there's so much more pressure on design now in some ways that you have to have it. It has to be, it has to be appealing online. People are also thinking about the environmental impact, and that's something that the designers are then having to also consider waste and how much they're producing of things. And like Franck was saying, there's so much change in the industry at the moment, and I think that's a lot more pressure on making something that is more perfect, that is going to sell better, that is going to photograph better, that is going to come across on social media better. But there's so many more avenues, and I think also, I don't know, see what you think, but with design as well, they have to be also really understanding of not only the design and production process to be able to work on that, but also how they work with the e-commerce team and how they're really bringing across the brand message so that those brands can survive better and they do have a clearer identity and engage with their customers. So I think it's going to be part of a much kind of broader skill set that everyone has to come together to build stronger messages and be able to show things, if they are going to be digital, to show it really well and that it has got a real company value. So I think it's a lot to think about now. It's not just your one part in design, it's you're a whole team doing something much broader.
And I suppose that for young people who are now graduating and looking for their new jobs, and let's say I hear more and more about working remotely, it's becoming quite normal in fashion studios, but learning how to do a digital presentation, like for example, in a Zoom environment, sharing your screen, sharing the designs you've done, how to present well digitally are things that not just graduates, all designers, or people working in the industry are going to have to do more, like learn how to have a decent background, learn how to do a really good PDF presentation where you're sharing a screen, like all these practical things that you go and do your fashion degree, which is all about your creative universe and heart of design and desire. But now there's all these other skills that we're going to need to take into consideration that I probably wouldn't have imagined 5 years ago that someone graduating would need to even consider. I mean, what do you guys think?
Also, they're asked now to be skilled in digital. The last selection we made, a young company, new brands that were starting now. They ask for young designer, and they ask to them to be informed on social media, influencer, trendsetter. They have to know the new community of these millennial customer, like disco, DJ, a particular kind of sport, the habits they have. They ask for young designer to be informed of what their similar age customer could ask. You know, this is and the other side is the sustainability, because the designers are certainly the young more sensitive to the health of our planet. So I think they will be more and more important as they are inclined to a sustainability way of working, of thinking, and the presence of young designer in a team will certainly have, in my opinion, a positive impact and influence to the others.
You had clients asking you about that, Sabrina.
Yes.
What about you, Franck?
I think that digital skills, for if we are talking about graduates, you know, the younger ones, I think digital skills are understood as existing. It's kind of assumed that because they're young people, as Sabrina said, they are supposed to know how the digital communication works, what this generation wants, and how it thinks. If that would probably be a very, I would not say by surprise, but that would be a surprise to discover after a few weeks in a job that someone this generation doesn't have the skills with this digital communication, that probably play against the person in question, because it's for the recruiters, they think that by essence, these people know what they're talking about in terms of digital technology. But it's also important to, it's not about communication. It's, as you, I think Sabrina, you said, I think it's, or Emma, I don't remember. You're right, digital and communication on a broader perspective, image, let's say, on any channel, is really supposed, is becoming more and more part of the design process. And designers are required to have an idea of how the product, the final product, will live its life in communications, in stores. So having, when designing, already a vision of visual merchandising, of digital media communications, of ad campaigns. Of course, they will not be requested at their young ages to have an opinion and to have a responsibility with those final and responsibility from other departments, but it's part of the same process more and more. So they are involved and they are required to be involved in this and to have this mindset. And the last thing I'd like to say about the digital orientation is the being open to digital creation. That's also something that's even newer, but more and more companies, well, in China, for instance, already existing for several seasons. But even here in Paris, some companies, even bigger ones and luxury ones, are testing 3D creation softwares where some designs can actually be developed even without being a prototype. Of course, you're not designing a haute couture gown without the actual prototype and all the steps, but some other products can be designed by eliminating many different processes and going directly through 3D creation. And this is something that this generation of designers have to be ready to deal with.
Do you think, for example, here in Britain, a lot of people are still on furlough, or graduates are waiting or starting to look for jobs? Do you think that learning some of those softwares would be useful to them?
Maybe, yeah, could happen.
Yeah. Even if it's looking at YouTube, the free stuff.
Actually, even getting this skill from a free video on YouTube is probably more than the average graduate will have. So that can help.
All four of us are headhunters, but we don't necessarily decide from graduates who is good. Can you explain a little bit about how the process works between clients, recruitment consultants, and how we go about helping graduates or candidates finding a job?
They ask more and more specific skill in one typology. Not only one typology, but because also, for example, for shoes, we have at least 4 different requests: sneakers, sports, men, day life, women's shoes, and high heel, elegant, and you know, for example, it's very different if you have a research for Balli or for Acquazzurra. These are 2 of the clients we have worked recently, and Balli since years. Of course, it's a completely different profile. For example, not only the style, the approach, everything is different in these the shoes designer that you have to introduce. So it depends on the style of the collection, but also in the team and the creative director. You have to know him and know what he wants, because sometimes it's a question of skin or of culture. Massimo Giorgetti for MSGM, for him, for example, is very important to find relations and a talk and an affinity on art and music with the person you work with. For some other, it's not important at all. You know, it's so different from company to company, and that's why a link as the headhunter are important, because the same person who is perfect and suitable for one brand is completely wrong for another one.
The idea was to having graduates understand that our job is not to assess them in terms of level. I would never say to a talent, you're good or you're not good. I would say you fit this company or you don't fit this company or position. Assessing the level is the jury after when they graduate. That's where they assess on the level. Then when they meet with us is to find a place where they will be able to use the skills they have. And that's where it's hard for graduates. It's that the skills they have is very scholar. It's not applicable to, you know, professional processes. So that's where I agree with you, Sabrina, when you said that sometimes adding some more professional exercise to the portfolio, more than just scholar exercise, can be useful. So taking a company as a a code and try to design something within this code, this can help us, for instance, to understand how they interpret codes and values from a brand that can be close or not so close from their own taste. That's what we assess. So we have those two orientations, assessing their operational skills, which is not so easy for the graduates. That's why we are more used to work with more senior profiles, and assessing a fit to a specific need at a company. It's also, that's the second part of the conversation we had about that, I remember. What also graduates need to understand, if they present their portfolios to Sabrina, me, or Faye, or you, they will have a different feedback. We are not a computer who is able to digest the portfolio and say such and such conclusion. What we'll do is bring our experience. We all have many, many years of experience recruiting creative talents. So we do have this capacity to understand the technology of their work and to assess their technical operational skills. And then there's something more that is very personal, is our own subjective feeling and response to what they show. Sometimes, of course, we like and don't like. So we try to not make decisions taking this into consideration, but at some point, they also have to understand that this comes in the process of meeting with someone.
And Faye, we spend a lot of time, I think, speaking to young people. Do you ever find young people ever resistant to the kind of advice that we give them?
Sometimes, yeah. I think it's, you know, it's very difficult for them. They've worked very hard for a very long time on projects and feel like, sometimes I think as a student you can feel like, oh well, I've just done, you know, you've just got to the end, you've just done this massive body of work and probably had no sleep, to be told to come in, you know, the next week to us and we tell you to do more. It probably feels a bit harsh. But it like Sabrina said, it really gives you that, it's not only that you've got, this is your work, this is your own taste, this is your own creative universe, but also how you can turn your hand to companies that you particularly love to what they do, and show that you understand the brand and you understand where they're coming from, even if you're taking them in a new direction, or you're doing something that you feel is really relevant for where we are now rather than where they've been before. You still have to show that understanding, that you get them and you get their, you know, their culture and their universe and what they stand for. So yes, but we often do tell graduates to do more work, which is probably does feel quite harsh at the time, but it is always, I think it really gives you that edge when you're sending work off to say, I'm so interested in your company and your brand, and I've been thinking about what you should do next. And it just shows that extra dedication when there's so many graduates graduating at the same time, that it really gives you a bit of an edge. So we'd always encourage that as well.
Yeah. Research into the brands that you really want to work at and show it in your portfolio is like key, I think, at this level of your career. Is any experience for a young designer or young creative relevant, or should they just stick on one job? So if someone graduates and they only want to be a designer, but they can't find that opportunity, should they also consider product development, or should they have a look at pattern cutting?
Not so difficult. So difficult to answer to. I usually advise them before choosing the kind of study they should start. It could be pattern making or design, but it depends. If you think you have a good, you are good with your hand, you like fabrics, you like to be in contact with the creative director or the head designer, you could get big satisfaction with the pattern making position. The pattern maker in Italy are considered like goddess, because half of the result is due to their skill. So yeah. It was I remember when the pattern maker arrived in Romeo Gigli design studio, everybody had to shut down, to bring coffee, to be completely at their disposal. It was more important than Bertolf Goodman coming in the studio. For Romeo and also for Alexander McQueen, who used to work 6 months in Romeo Gigli, and he suffers so much because he couldn't connect and have a talk with the pattern maker, and he wanted to work with them, of course, knowing what he did afterwards. You can imagine how, but the work I saw so many times, for example, Romeo working with the pattern making and reaching some results at the end. He was so satisfied because they succeeded in really obtaining what he had in his head in a three-dimensional way. So pattern making is an extremely satisfaction work job if you do it well. But if you are a designer and you want to be a designer, it's not so easy to decide to be a pattern maker and cut the pattern, you know. Probably you could start with graphic designer, you could start with print, but you should start, in my opinion, in the design studio to have the possibility to how to say, sleep, to go from one side to the other. But if you start as product manager, it's not so frequent to succeed in going back to designer, in my opinion.
What about you, Faye? What do you think?
I do think it's quite difficult to switch over because you've gained really good experience in something like pattern making or production or whatever it is. However, I know it's a really difficult time, and I think where previously I would have said, oh, you really want to be a women's wear designer, look for women's wear designer jobs. Now I may say, oh, well, why don't you consider children's wear? Why would you, would you consider teen fashion? Would you consider looking at menswear? Or, this in your portfolio could be really transferable. So I would say it is a good time to have things a little bit broader, but try to keep a hand in some creative element of that.
And what about the roles that we search for that we can never find enough candidates for? What are some of those? Like pattern cutters, for example.
Yeah, I mean, if you pattern cutters, garment techs, anything technical, good technical people, we always need. So if you've done your degree and you've loved that hands-on process of working through that and problem solving and hands-on with fabrics, yeah, we can't get enough people like that. That would be amazing. Also, people that may have done fashion, women's wear or menswear or something, but have that eye for print or interiors, or, we're all so much more considerate with what we want to buy great things for our homes now. And we see so much more of that online that we think, oh, really, I'm into that, whatever it is, cushions, plant pots, this, that, but interior stuff, I think also is something that we're spending a lot of money on these days. Maybe someone that understands fashion that would be interested in that side of things too. And that's always quite hard for us to find.
That is so true.
If I may add something, just an example. A few years ago, I was invited by a school in the Netherlands to, follow the master graduation for an entire year. So it was about 15 designers that I was meeting every month, just to give feedback on their work, on their ongoing work until the graduation collection at the end of the year. That was very interesting to see that at the beginning of the year, they were designers at the same school, competing for the same diploma. At the end of the year, they were also meant to receive the same degree. But what I tried to help them find out during the entire year was that even if the school was a design school, in the end, after 1 month, 2 months, some could see some could maybe discover that they were better at color design than fashion design. Some could be better at print or draping than actually sketching. Some could be better at finding more fulfillment at doing accessories and the styling of their looks more than the actual design of the clothes, and so on. And in the end, what I tried to help them was to find their own specialty. Yeah. Some might be lucky and be transversal and be good and finding pleasure on all those skills, but most of the time you are good at one or two of these, and it's important that you try to identify those skills that are truly representing your talent the best, to work on them harder and be an expert of these, and that will bring value to your application for finding a job.
Do you think graduates should be applying now to companies while we wait, or should they just apply directly or be waiting? What do you think they should do?
Not wait. Why to wait? They can apply now, apply later, but I would start now applying with the job position I found in the different website and of the different company, and try with the headhunter too. Why not? Everything is a little frozen at the moment, the human resources manager have so many problems to face at the moment, and they are waiting to see if there is a second wave or not. We had some hiring just frozen one day from the other because Beijing probably was blocked for a second wave, and these scared most of the people. But we have to be positive and think that we will start soon again, probably from September. So why not to try to apply from now?
I agree.
Yeah, I agree too. I'm busy, but I'm less busy. So when I see graduate portfolios with work that I like, then I'm arranging telephone calls with them, and I've got time to get to know people, even if we're not doing our usual graduate season of having 250 graduates come into our offices and meet all of them. All of you, if you had one piece of advice that you would give a graduate, what would it be? Your key tip?
Mine would be to be really proactive. A lot of these jobs that, you might think, if you're in a smaller fashion company, if you're applying to someone directly, sometimes it can be just the right moment, you catch the right person at the right time. So I think for me, I'd say be really proactive, be applying for things, be sending stuff out. And I'm not saying to badger people, but also to make sure that you can, if you email now and the companies, there's no one there, just email them again in a couple of months. That's fine. It's not a problem. Keep those lists going, keep applying, because I think it is, you want to walk out of university and you've got a great degree and you're going to get a job, but obviously it is a difficult time. So just to keep really searching, applying, working on your portfolio, and be really proactive.
Yeah. To apply and never lose the desire to learn, to be curious, to be ambitious, and to be ready to get involved. I would quote Steve Jobs, stay hungry, stay foolish. Now it's more important than ever to be proactive and curious, ambitious, and of course, because you have not to lose the hope, and then company will need young, full of energy and passion.
Well, I've got two bits of advice. One is pick up the telephone and call people. You can call somewhere if you're a young graduate and you want to call the studio. You might end up speaking to the person who will accept your CV and do the hiring. I also say, as part of that, if the phone call goes a bit wrong halfway through, you just go, hello, I can't hear you, and hang up and call later. And then the other piece of advice I give is, if you get to an interview or you get into the studio environment, it's just smile. smile at everyone. It gives a really good impression. Even if you're really nervous, smiling spreads good energy and people will remember you.
Yeah, well, I completely agree with the smile. I'm not so sure about the call because, you know, that's also cultural. For instance, for a French calling, making a cold call to someone you don't know and just promote yourself is something that's very difficult for French people. So
I'll tell you, I meant about the phone. It's just say, who should I send my application to? That's it.
Yeah.
Not like, hi, I want a job. Just who?
But my advice, the advice I wanted to say was actually kind of in the same spirit. I wanted to say, be optimistic. Fashion is changing, but actually this is part of fashion DNA to change. And in the way, what we can see for the future that is happening or will happen is that for sure, creativity is one skill that will be looked after in the next months, years, and decades. So being in this industry with a design or creative diploma is really already helpful to find a place in the professional world. And I'd like to just say also another piece of advice is just to keep in mind that no career looks like another career. So you can make mistakes in your choices, it can happen, but there's always a way to change path at some point if you made a mistake. And if a goal seems difficult to understand, to achieve, try to think of the intermediary steps that you can achieve to reach the final goal that you have. And as long as you, all along the process of being more and more senior, you'll be able to identify your fields of expertise and then to readjust your goals accordingly all the way along. So in the end, I can see only positive things. So that's the way to be optimistic, I think.
And what you're saying too is true even for a young person who may not get the first job that they want. Then those steps between graduating and employment could be speaking to recruitment consultants, asking for review of the portfolio, working on separate projects, listening to advice the industry might give to you, because we see hundreds and thousands of portfolios and we know at this brand, they like projects like this. They like drawings like that. So what you're saying for somebody who's got like their career goal, it could even just be as simple as the goal from graduation to their first job, I suppose.
That was amazing. Thank you so much to all of you. That was so insightful. And I think really what sums it up for me is keep going, keep doing the right thing, keep persevering. Your insights have been absolutely invaluable, particularly to get that international perspective, as so many of our graduates hopefully will be leaving to work abroad. So thank you to you all. Thank you, Franck, Sabrina and Faye, and particular thanks to Emma, long-term friend of the BFC, for chairing it so beautifully. Thank you. And I think my final thoughts to all the class of 2020, hard times come, but hard times also do go. So keep resilient, keep going. You will find a brilliant job and career in fashion. Thank you.